So hello and welcome to our house today. Here to celebrate 72 years of the National Health Service, and we'd like you now to join us in with that wonderful hymn, which is
Praise my soul, the King of Heaven. Praise my soul, the King of Heaven. To his feet thy tribute bring. Ransomed, healed, restored, forgiven. Who like me his praise should sing? Alleluia, alleluia. Praise the everlasting King. Praise him for his grace and favour to our fathers in distress. Praise him still the same as ever, slow to chide and swift to bless. Alleluia, alleluia, glorious in his faithfulness. Father, like he tends and spares us, well of evil frame he knows. In his hands he gently bears us, rescues us from all our foes. Alleluia, alleluia, widely as his mercy flows. Angels help us to adore him. Ye behold him face to face. Sun and moon bow down before him. Dwellers all in time and space. Alleluia, alleluia. Praise with us the God of grace.
July 5th, the new National Health Service starts, providing hospital and specialist services, medicines, drugs and appliances, care of the teeth and eyes, maternity services. Have you chosen your family doctor? If not, ask your doctor now if he'll look after you under the new scheme. If he can't accept you, ask at the post office for the address of the Executive Council, where you'll be given the names of other doctors in your area who are taking part in the new service. Ask the doctor you choose for an application form for each member of your family. You can also get these forms from the Executive Council office, the post office, or the public library. Fill in the form like this. One form has to be filled in for each member of the family and then handed over to your doctor. Now don't forget, choose your doctor now.
Lord, we come to ask your healing. Teach us of love. All unspoken shame revealing. Teach us of love.
are now going to share a reading which is the story of 3 nurses in the National Health Service.
I am a nurse. I protect, advocate, listen, empathise, teach, lead and inspire. I save lives. I help others. I hold hands. I make a difference every day. I've always wanted to be a nurse since I was 5 years old. It's my vocation. I've been caring for patients in various nursing roles for over 19 years, and there has never been a single one when I wished I did something else. And there hasn't been a single day where I've not learned something new. My career as a nurse has been shaped and guided by the nurse tutors who educated me, the nurse mentors who've guided me, and the colleagues I've been fortunate enough to share my career with. Most importantly, I'm the nurse I am because of the patients I've been fortunate enough to meet and to help. Every single patient I've had the pleasure of caring for leaves an imprint, some far greater than others. I can be a smile to someone who needs it, a companion to the lonely and vulnerable. I can celebrate a first breath, or I can provide comfort and dignity during a last breath. I am privileged to be a nurse. We're the heart of healthcare and the hospitality of the hospital, and while we are bound by paperwork, short on hands, sleep and energy, we are never short on care. Today, I celebrate our profession and nursing professionalism. I am a nurse. I am a nurse. I look after patients with cancers. I'm often the first person they meet after diagnosis, and so I sit down with them, take the time to give them some information and make sure they've got my contact details, and I'm the person that they know will help find the answer. With more and more people being diagnosed with cancer, it's really important that the funding is there to let us do our jobs and be there for the people who really need us. It's not always easy, and sometimes I find it hard to switch off. Cancer patients will say to me, "I'm really worried about how my family will cope." As a mum myself, it's really tough to hear that. But part of my job is supporting the family and their children if they're struggling. A cancer diagnosis is a very frightening thing. It changes lives, and I know many patients can feel very alone, even if they've got family around them. But being able to help makes a real difference. I am a nurse. I've always believed that nursing is a privilege and an opportunity to help people and communities to have the best possible health. We can make a real difference to help people prevent illness and look after themselves and their families through healthy lifestyle choices. I am a nurse, and I am proud to be able to give my time for others and help, to be able to give love and compassion, to help people through the dark times of their life. I am a nurse.
We cannot measure how you heal or answer every sufferer's prayer, yet we believe your grace responds where faith and doubt unite to care. Your hands, the bloodied on the cross, survive to hold and heal and warn, to carry all through death to life, and cradle children yet unborn.
going to share together a poem which is called These Are the Hands by Michael Rosen. It was actually a poem that was written for the 60th anniversary of the National Health Service.
A poem written by Michael Rosen to mark the 60th anniversary of the NHS in 2008. These are the hands that touch us first. Feel your head, find the pulse, and make your bed. These are the hands that tap your back, test the skin, hold your arm, wheel the bin, change the bulb, fix the drip, pour the jug, replace your hip. These are the hands that fill the bath, mop the floor, flick the switch, smooth the sore, burn the swabs, give us a jab, throw out sharps, design the lab. And these are the hands that stop the leaks, empty the pan, wipe the pipes, carry the can, clamp the veins, make the cast, log the dose, and touch us last.
Brother, sister, let me serve you. Let me be as Christ to you. Pray that I may have the grace to let you be my servant too. We are pilgrims on a journey, fellow travelers on the road. We are here to help each other walk a mile and bear the load. I will hold the Christ light for you in the night time of your fear. I will hold my hand out to you, speak the peace you long to hear. I will weep when you are weeping, when you laugh, I'll laugh with you. I will share your joy and sorrow till we've seen this journey through. When we sing to God in heaven, we shall find such harmony. All of all we've known together of Christ's love and agony.
So now we are going to share with you the actual story of the NHS, the birth of the NHS, 5th of July 1948. The creation of the National Health Service in 1948 was a product of years of hard work and motivation from various figures who felt the current healthcare system was insufficient and needed to be revolutionised. More and more people were beginning to speak out about it and be proactive, including Dr. Benjamin Moore, a Liverpool physician who had a great foresight and aspiring vision of how the future in healthcare should be.
His ideas were written in the dawn of the health age, and he was probably one of the first to use the phrase National Health Service. His ideas led him to create the State Medical Service Association, which held its first meeting in 1912. It would be another 30 years before his ideas would feature in the Beveridge plan for the NHS. Before the creation of the NHS or anything like it, when someone found themselves needing a doctor or to use medical facilities, patients were generally expected to pay for those treatments. By 1929, the Local Government Act amounted to local authorities running services which provided medical treatment for everybody. On the 1st of April 1930, the London County Council then took over responsibility for around 140 hospitals, medical schools, and other institutions. By the time the Second World War broke out, the London Council was running the largest public service of its kind for healthcare.
There was a growing consensus that the current health system of insurance should be extended to include dependents of wage earners and that voluntary hospitals should be integrated. These decisions were not taken any further when, in 1939, the outbreak of the Second World War took precedence. The wartime period necessitated the creation of an emergency hospital service to care for the wounded, making these services dependent on the government. The issue of health provision in Britain was becoming a growing problem. By 1941, the Ministry of Health was in process of agreeing a post-war health policy, with the aim that services would be available to the entire general public. A year later, the Beveridge Report put forward a recommendation for a comprehensive health and rehabilitation service, and this was supported across the House of Commons by all parties. Eventually, the Cabinet endorsed the White Paper put forward by the Minister of Health, Henry Willink, in 1944, which set out guidelines for the NHS. These ideas were taken on by the next Health Minister, Bevan. The nuts and bolts of the project finally took hold when Clement Attlee came to power in 1945, and Bevan became Health Minister.
It was Bevan who embarked on the campaign to bring about the NHS in the form that we are now familiar with. This project was said to be based on 3 ideas which Bevan expressed in the launch on the 5th of July 1948. These essential values were, firstly, that the services helped everyone. Secondly, healthcare was free. And finally, that care would be provided based on need rather than the ability to pay. Since then, the NHS has gone through many changes, improvements, updates, and modernisation processes. No one back in 1948 would have been able to foresee the way in which the NHS developed, succeeded, pioneered, and expanded. In the early years of the NHS, not long after its launch, expenditure was already exceeding previous expectations, and charges were considered for prescriptions to meet the rising costs. By the time of the 1960s, these early adjustments were altered, and it was considered to be a strong period of growth for the NHS, characterised by new developments in the availability of drugs. As the years rolled by, new changes were made and reorganisation occurred in 1974, as the period of economic optimism which had been characterised the earlier decade was beginning to wane. By the time of the 1980s and the Thatcher government, modern methods of management were introduced. However, the necessity for the NHS to remain as a critical mainstay service for the British public was prioritised still by Margaret Thatcher, despite the conflict in ideas in other areas such as welfare and public housing.
Today, the NHS is facing a greater crisis still. The issues of funding and demand continue to rise, and the ability to provide free healthcare to all is a continuous topic of debate for many. Nevertheless, 72 years marks an important moment in British history. The NHS, created in 1948, was brought about through hard work and dedicated from those that truly believed in new ideas about services, health, medical ethics, and society. The NHS has faced crisis, economic downturns, periods of prosperity, growth, and recently been in the front line of a worldwide health pandemic. The NHS in some ways has exceeded expectations, and at the same time, there is always more that can be done. The idea of the National Health Service once upon a time would have been unheard of, yet today we could never imagine life without it.
When you try your best but you don't succeed. When you get what you want but not what you need. When you feel so tired but you can't sleep. Stuck in reverse. And the tears come streaming down your face. When you lose something you can't replace. Or you love someone but it goes to waste. Could it be worse? Light will guide you home and ignite your bones, and I will try to fix you. And high above and down below, when you're too in love to let it go. But if you never try, you'll never know just what you're worth. Light will guide you home and ignite your bones, and I will try to fix you. Light will guide you home and ignite your bones, and I will try to fix you.
So, let us now join together in a short time of prayer.
God of healing and compassion, we thank you for the establishment of the National Health Service and for the dedication of all who work in it. Give skill, sympathy and resilience to all who care for the sick, and your wisdom to those engaged in medical research. Strengthen all in their vocation through your Spirit, that through their work many will be restored to health and strength. Through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen.
Amen. And let us all join together in the words of the Lord's Prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen.
To dream the unrightable wrong, to love your and chase from afar, to try when your arms are too weary, to reach the unreachable star. This is my quest, to follow that star, no matter how hopeless, no matter how far, to fight for the right without question or pause, to be willing to march into hell for a heavenly cause. And I know if I'll only be true to this glorious quest, that my heart will lie peaceful and calm when I'm laid to my rest, and the world will be better for this, that one man scorned and covered in scars still strove with his last ounce of courage to reach the unreachable star. So thank you for joining us, everybody, when we're celebrating 72 years of the wonderful institution that is the NHS, and a big shout out and thank you to anybody who works in the NHS for all your hard work and commitment during COVID-19. 72 years is almost a centenary coming up.
And it's wonderful that we have this thing called the National Health Service. The National Health Service has not only helped to save lives, but has given wonderful care to people at the end of their lives too. And to that, I think every single person in this country is eternally grateful. From a broken arm, to a cut in the arm, to major heart surgeries, cancer operations, you name it, the NHS are always there for us. We hope that next week you will join us at 12 o'clock, where we will be back on Facebook Live.
With Pepper.
With Pepper jumping around. She's just in a very long walk. We're having some doggy peaceful time at the moment. But now, what else can we finish with on a day where we celebrate what is just such the most wonderful gift we have here at the NHS? Well, why not join together with that wonderful hymn of care and of praise? And that is, He's got the whole world in his hands, with, of course, added key changes.
He's got the whole world in his hand. 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 He's got you and me, brother, in his hand. He's got you and me, brother, in his hand. He's got you and me, brother, in his hand. He's got the whole world in his hand. He's got you and me, sister, in his hand. He's got you and me, sister, in his hand. He's got you and me, sister, in his hand. He's got the whole world in his hand. He's got